So happy
Yes.
June. Welcome to
Yes.
June Quilts First.
Exactly. So let us know if you're here because we had a little bit of a glitch as we were trying to use the link we sent. So I'm hoping that people have found us. Okay,
Yeah.
at least I see a couple people.
All right.
Are
Welcome.
Here. Yes.
So
Happy
I guess
June.
it's June, so it really is summer.
Absolutely. We have a bunch of small things to talk about, and I guess one or two big things, but we will have time to answer questions. So if you have, good, we have a few people ready already. Feel free to think about questions you want to ask. This is the best time to ask them. You may hear our dog Lucky throwing around her Kong. She's eating dinner.
She's playing right by us.
We'll hope it's not too distracting.
Exactly.
So,
but let's dive in.
Yeah.
We've got some fun things to talk about.
So, unless you have been following us since like 2006, you may not know that we were involved in a small way with an organization called Find Cell Work in London. And it is a program that helps men in British prisons make quilts and needlepoint pillows to sell while they're in prison, and the money that they earn from the quilts and the needlepoint that they make in prison goes into an account, so the day they are released from prison, they can have rent and food and things to get themselves back up on their feet. And I went and visited the prison and talked to the men in that prison. It was a really interesting series of conversations that I had with the men in that prison, in Her Majesty's prison.
Yeah.
And
Back then, Her Majesty.
I guess
His.
it was His Majesty's now, right? The new documentary, The Quilters on Netflix, was of particular interest to me since we had donated fabric to Find Cell Work, and I visited the prison and been talking for a while with the organizers. And
so if you don't know about this documentary,
yes,
it's only been out for
a couple weeks. But it's about a prison in Missouri, I think, that has a quilting program for men who have excellent behavior reports within the prison. Some of them are there for very serious crimes, but they have been in there for 40 years and haven't had any behavior issues or whatever. And they make quilts for children in the foster care system in Missouri.
Enormous number of quilts, and the documentary, it's a simple, very well done documentary that's not it's great because it's truly about the program and the work these people are doing. It's not showy cinematography, it's just good, clear storytelling.
But I think many of our quilting friends would find it interesting to see the stereotype broken of the quilter and to hear these men admire each other's skills and to talk about how quilting has helped their mental health and helped their behavior within the prison. And many of these men will never be released. They're in there for murder and things like that, and they admit that they did it, and some of them had drug problems, some of them were young. One of them was like 19 or something.
And it's great seeing in the chat that many of you have seen it, because I think one of the things that's wonderful about the documentary is all the universal issues that are universal to human nature, to quilting as a source of therapy, as a way to give back to communities, and the design and the craftsmanship is really outstanding.
Well, one of the things that there were the men in the prison that I visited in England were in what was called the vulnerable population part of the prison. So typically men who needed to be separated from the rest of the prison population because they were gay, they were Muslim. This is what they told me. This is not me projecting. This is the facts. These are the categories. They were gay, they were Muslim, or they had committed crimes against children. And
so they were very vulnerable internally.
To being attacked by other, they had to be separated from the rest of the prison population. For their own safety. And they also seem to suffer the most mental health issues in terms of depression. And, you know, I could go on for the entire hour about this one, I won't, but the one of the things that I thought, and I'll tell you, if you've never visited a prison, I did my master's thesis on gardening as a therapeutic device and job training skill in a women's prison, and I spent a year going back and forth from the University of Virginia, where I was getting my master's degree, to the Virginia Correctional Center for Women. And so this has been a long interest for me, way back. But so when Fine Cell Work, when I found out about them, I definitely wanted to visit them when we were in the UK. But one of the things that was really interesting, because I went back, I wrote a big blog post about this on a blog that is no longer around
years ago.
And I actually went back and looked at my notes about it. And one of the men that was in that group that I visited in the UK was waiting for a kidney transplant. And so he was he was physically very ill. And another man clearly was very, very troubled. And he talked in the same way that the men in the documentary did about when they went back to their cells at night. In the UK, they were allowed, they didn't have a long arm, so they were doing everything by hand. And they said that they would sit up quilting hand quilting their quilts just until all hours of the night. And one particularly, a man who was going to be in prison for the rest of his life said that he said, it wasn't until I started quilting that I realized I was capable of making something beautiful. And as long as I live, I will never forget that statement, because I think, you know, we all take it for granted, but, you know, if you haven't grown up in a way that
you've had that opportunity to make something beautiful,
that you don't realize that you have that within you.
Yeah, it's a capacity that many people don't discover.
It's just it's a profound thought that this was like a 65-year-old man telling me that it wasn't until a year ago or 2 years ago when he started quilting that he realized he was capable of making something beautiful. So by all means, I heartily recommend it.
Watch,
like
rewatch.
There are a lot of, you know, there's the reason I want most people to watch it in general is based on my experiences. We pay about $35,000 a person for somebody to be incarcerated in the United States. And we can decide whether we want them to spend that time being punished, only punished, or whether we want to help them figure out a way to return to society in a productive way, whether we want to help them deal with addictions or whatever. But this documentary makes such a good case. And if you haven't seen it, in one point, somebody loses their privileges and everybody's kind of devastated about that. But this is just it's a civics lesson on what our prisons could be in terms of helping people deal with, and also the people who work there that
Yeah.
have less violence and that kind of thing. So
I'm glad so many people have
yes,
seen it. It's great.
yes. So anyway, heartily recommend The Quilters on Netflix if you haven't seen it. Okay, now, and this is another kind of like random thing that I've been thinking about like all month, and I've been waiting to share it with you. So several of you have asked us how we deal with sitting and stiffness for long periods of sitting when you're sewing, or mobility as you're, because you've seen pictures of us, we work on the floor a lot. And somebody I've admired for several years now, that I don't know why I didn't think to tell you about this person earlier, but her name is Petra Fisher. Petra is her first name, Fisher, Fisher, last name Movement, Petra Fisher Movement. Petra Fisher has wonderful reels on Facebook, and she has free and paid programs that help you exercise in small gestures where you don't have to change your clothes, you don't have to go someplace. So if mobility is challenging for you, like she had this one with shoulders where here, I'll do it from the side. You slide for tension in your shoulders, where you slide an arm back and then back and forth like 10 times on each side. And it just gets that tension in your upper body, in your shoulders from sitting at a computer or whatever.
And one thing that we all know, when we have the luxury of time as quilters, it's easy to get lost in your work, and you might be sitting cutting for hours or sewing for hours. So these are all great mobility exercises that may affect you or help you with your quilting or just with your day-to-day life.
But they don't require gym membership. I mean, because when we were asked before, I said exercise, exercise, exercise. But for some people, that isn't, that is easier said than done. And a way to kind of take small steps toward that is these little small exercise breaks that you can take while you're sewing, because she really is all about a movement diet where you have lots of ranges of movement throughout your day, and just some of these little small breaks that you can take might really be helpful to you. So I hope you'll check out we don't normally recommend other people, on this, but I think she is so great for quilters. So
or you can also be like me and just I'm naturally restless, so I'm moving from
but still the mobility she has about targeting, like if you are stiff because you're sitting for a long time, she talks about how you can put your heel into the ground to activate certain muscles in your legs that will help with the stiffness. So anyway, I hope you'll check out Petra Fisher Movement. Okay. And you want to talk about On the Spot?
Oh, yeah. Since we last saw you, actually, let me grab, can you hand me the quilt, son?
Yes.
We had our 2025 LTD Limited line that we showed you, I think, last time.
Hold it up big.
Oh, here. Hold it up big. But at the time, we did not, let's go sideways, this way.
There we go.
I don't think we had
good it looks on screen.
Oh, it looks great. I don't think we had this finished at the time.
Yeah.
But this is called On the Spot, and it's a free pattern. We actually don't have the pattern on our website. It's on Benner, Texas, because we designed it for them to promote this line. And what I always like about a quilt like this is you get to see how different fabrics look when, in general, when you have half square triangles. There are places where they come together 8 fabrics at a point, or just along the hypotenuse, you'll just have 2 fabrics. There are areas where 4 touch, and
we have different approaches to this. I say trim the dog, dog ears.
When you're
because you don't want that bulk. And Bill thinks it's not necessary. So you can.
She's talking about putting the half square triangles together.
Yes, the half square triangles, when you get that overlap, there's a lot of bulkiness there. He doesn't trim his at all.
Nope.
What?
No need.
Yeah, and I have my little scissors and I trim them. I stack
It's
them up
always
and trim
funny
them.
because we sometimes tag team where one of us is at the machine sewing and the other is
What
at
is
the
this? You
ironing
haven't trimmed
board.
anything.
She's like, what's with these? I'm like, yeah, they're fine. And so
They trim. I know they do. I know they do. So anyway.
Yes. So anyway, one of the things that's a nice little detail if I hold this up, although this may look almost black on screen, I don't think it'll show up any closer.
Espresso.
It's the espresso crosshatch, which is a really beautiful deep brown.
I trim. See?
Oh,
Kathy's on Team Bill.
all right. And Kathy, as we all know, is the right answer. So well done.
I think if we had a poll, you would lose on this.
Okay.
Dina trumps.
So when I see all these trimmers, think about how many more hours you would have in your life if you didn't trim.
You stack them up with the rotocutter. You can get them like 10 of them at one time.
No need. All right. Okay. Well,
But anyway.
She likes stirring it up. Okay, so
Get engagement.
But what I want to do is turn it over, because when we designed this line, we added the bonus bright circles that were based on that shipping, the shipping envelope packaging that we did, but. There's a thread. See, now here I will trim because I've just found an untrimmed thread. And that's what happens when you have a new quilt. But what I want to show you is one of the decisions when you have a quilt like this is always going to be quilting thread. So if you look at all the fabrics.
Pull it back and see if you can guess what color thread we used. Because look at all of it. It's multicolored and it's mediums and darks.
Plus the light of the vanilla crosshatch X.
And then we know that it's got the white background on the back.
So
Bill.
We went with the same thread on the front and back. And some people will have different threads on the front and back. But I don't know if you can see, we quilted this in spirals. And one of the issues and this is kind of a technical thing, but if you're quilting left to right or right to left, when the bobbin thread and the top thread lock, they're never in the exact same position. Oh, we have
a distraction.
We've got a distraction who I think may make an appearance here.
I know.
She wants to be part of things.
She saw somebody on Facebook
So here's Lucky.
She has her summer cut. Yes.
So.
Okay, well, let's see if you can sit and behave yourself.
With spiral quilting, you go in and you reverse and go the other way. And so technically, the thread, as it locks, tends to pull up a little higher in one direction towards the top and down towards the backing in the other. And what that means is you're going to get tiny glimpses, not big glimpses, but tiny glimpses of the bobbin thread on the top and the top thread on the bottom, on the backing. So in an ideal world, when we're doing quilting that is a spiral or we're really changing directions of the sewing, I like to have the same thread on the top and the bottom. So this is a long way of saying we needed a thread that looked good on the front and the back.
But it's a light tan. I mean, you don't even...
Yeah, if we go up close...
You can't see it on the white.
You might think at first that it would really stand out on the white, but as soon as you get 2 feet away, it completely disappears.
But in the darks too, it's so subtle.
And I see the suggestion, a taupe, a gray, a light olive green. I think those would all work because they're all kind of desaturated. None of those are intense colors. I could see a light olive green looking fantastic with this as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing is these X's, which are the espresso and the vanilla, are only a 1/2 inch finished. So you're not going to see that much of the thread on them. So that thread is lighter than the espresso, but darker than the vanilla, but you don't really see it on either one.
You want to talk about the pattern?
Yeah, I was saying earlier.
The stitching pattern?
The stitching,
yeah.
I was saying earlier, is spirals. So it's a freehand spiral that goes in, comes out, goes to the next spiral, comes out.
But the scale of the spirals is a little bit smaller than the units.
So if you look there, you'll notice that those spirals are about, I'm going to say 3/8 of an inch, the lines of the quilting apart, because basically we wanted to make sure that the quilting was closer together than that 1/2 inch of those X's, because otherwise it can leave shapes that when you have shadow, those shapes can become dominant and more apparent than the actual crosses in the piecing. So it's always a factor to consider. How does the density of the quilting interact with the visuals of the piecing?
So this is all to say, relax if you can about thread color, because it's not as obvious as you think it is. And if you can go on a lighter neutral, you can obviously do other things as well, but a lighter neutral won't show on the dark fabrics as much as you think it's going to.
Right. Whereas if we had gone darker, that would have shown on the back.
Exactly. So it's
we're kind of weighing how do things work. This is when you have such a flamboyant background or backing fabric, people are going to look at it.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure it works well with both. And as always, if in doubt, just make a little sandwich to test it.
Yeah.
But as I said,
Deb Merrill said she started cutting out this quilt today.
Oh, great. I really enjoyed it. We made our blocks. We didn't, this was a quilt that we didn't really plan in terms of we made each block and then we did the layout. We didn't plan the layout ahead of time. And there were lots of good options.
Yeah. But, when you're laying it out, actually, we're going to talk a lot about this in Shoreline as well, like how to get started when you have a scrappy palette, because it can be, I know a lot of people struggle with having piles of hundreds of, different fabrics and how do you start to put them together?
But it is worth mentioning for this one also, if you're doing something that's supposed to look very kind of scrappy and you're putting together half square triangles, don't overthink or don't think at all when you pair them up. A lot of people think like, oh, I want to make each pair this beautiful set. And the goal is to mix them up as much as possible, because ultimately they're going to be next to another triangle. And if you make a bunch of like pretty reds and oranges and blues and greens, you might end up making too many of the same thing, or things might cluster and almost...
We'll talk about it in Shoreline. Yeah, the specifics of that. Okay, so actually, well then should we move on to Shoreline? Yes. Do you want to get started?
Sure. So as many of you know, we're going to be having our Shoreline quilt along starting on the 5th, on Thursday.
Thursday at 7 o'clock Central.
And it's a 4-week quilt along. It's not a mystery quilt along. It's a different kind of quilt along. I have just a quick printout of
one of the layouts.
One of the layouts. But the main idea behind this that we've talked about is you're going to have wavy rows that alternate. In this case, light, dark, light, dark. Some people will be doing blue then black, or some will be doing an ombre. But the way this quilt along is structured is really, it's a little different. You're going to get directions each week for that week, and there will be a pretty thorough video tutorial. So
it's beginner friendly. It really is. Like, don't let those curves freak you out, because it's step by step. If you've never used templates before, if you've never pieced a curve before, we're going to take you through each step.
And again, even though the rows, every single thing is a curve, if you haven't done this, it's hard to believe, but with the slight stretch of the curves, they are so simple to sew together, and we will get to that. But as we said, don't let that intimidate you. The other thing that, we thought a lot about this quilt because it's summer, and at least it's summer up here in the Northern Hemisphere. I know that some of you are in the Southern Hemisphere, but for us, it's summer, and it's, we like to spend a lot of time outside, but also the days are long, so we have nice chunks of time to quilt. And I personally like some mindless sewing. So the structure of this, that you can see just from this illustration, is these rows are all made up of bands. Okay, I've got a dog. Sorry, I had to give you that because
okay.
She tried to curl up on it.
Yes, that's on brand.
So this is all about cutting strips and a lot of chain piecing. So
it's easy breezy summer sewing though.
So here's an example. We're just sewing a whole bunch of strips together, and then the first week is all about fabric selection with I think the video that goes along with this is going to be really wonderful for everyone, because there's a lot of customization that you can do with this quilt, but the video will be a tutorial to help you think how you build a palette. How do you make your quilt yours?
Exactly.
So in our case,
and in terms and on top of that, so you'll have choices with the way to personalize the layout, the way to personalize, to adjust fabrics, and then also sizes.
And sizes.
Yeah.
There will be a wall size, a napping size, and a queen size. And basically,
so this is where we'll get started.
What we'll be doing in the first section is having everyone pick fabrics. Thank you. And then I'll hold it above. So you can see how they're going to be lighter rows and darker rows. And
super simple.
Yeah, so
pretty on the back too.
The first step, and you'll learn a lot more if you're doing the quilt along, is just making smaller units. So it is really,
it's gonna be fun.
Summer, fun, friendly, and of course, as always with the quilt alongs, we have a Spotify playlist. So if you just like to have music on, it's kind of good summer tunes. But the details of the Shoreline quilt along are on our website. If you go to the quilt along section, lots of information there. General ideas about fabric requirements. It's going to depend, if you look at it, it's a lot of strips. And we have the general requirements. Of course, it's going to vary for everyone because some people will be using 12 fabrics, some will be using 30 fabrics, some will be using all scraps from their stash. But, we'll get you in the right direction.
But I think the thing that's for people who want to see how we make adjustments to a pattern in terms of layout or color or customizing it for your own aesthetics or your own as a challenge to yourself, I think this will be a project that helps you see how the choices you make will dramatically change your quilt. It's not people are going to have really wide range of quilts.
Really different quilts.
Really different. Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, but I have the feeling this is going to be one of those quilt alongs that a lot of people will make one and then they'll want to make another, because you'll be able to visualize how your decisions affect the final quilt. And, as I said, it's a 4-week quilt along. So the first week is cutting and the initial sewing. The second week will be dealing with those curves. And then we go into kind of layout and finishing. But it really is a manageable quilt with...
Well, we have a small...
I want to say too much, but I don't want to give it all away.
we have... Well, they can see the final quilt.
Yes.
But this is a smaller group because I think people are afraid of the curves. Or they don't want to do the curves. And I think maybe once people start seeing...
Yeah. I mean, it's still hundreds of people, so it's...
But are there a certain number of fabrics we need?
You know,
Look at the fabric, look at the product description on the website, because that I think is the most
right. The
clear.
number of fabrics, I don't think it necessarily says. I think the very minimum would be like, and I'm talking very minimum, would be to have 7 different fabrics in a row. We're going to probably
for each
have
group.
Yeah, so in this case, you could have 7 lights and 7 darks and use them throughout the quilt. Honestly, the more the better. I think we probably have around 15, 20, because we're pulling in things from our stash. We're also we're actually using all fabrics that we designed over the years.
Yeah.
But we're using the 2025 LTD collection that's out now.
It's kind of it's like structure.
Is the structure.
Yeah,
so, but that's a good question. Like the minimum would be 7 per row. So if you look on the website, there's an example where there's an ombre that goes kind of yellow, orange, red, purple, blue, that ombres down. And if you do that, you'd want 7 yellows, 7 oranges, 7 red oranges.
Yeah. And there are people who are talking about like using black and whites with one other color or a series of brights, and that's also one of the alternative
You'll see
layouts.
kind of accents.
Yeah, but if you look on the product description on our website, you'll see some of the ideas for alternative layouts that we'll coach you through, and then you'll also see a link to the preview video where we talk about each of those layouts, and then there's others you could probably come up with as well.
Yeah. I think most of you who are involved in this partway through will just see possibilities that, we're not covering every possibility. We're kind of giving a few general directions, and then you can depart as you wish from that. And I'm smiling because I just saw Susan's comment that the way she improved at curves was doing them multiple times.
Absolutely.
Well, there are multiple curves.
Yeah.
and I will say that, with the curve is very gentle, and before finalizing a design like this, we always cut it out, we prototype it, and we say, like, how will people feel about this? And honestly, this one was even easier than I expected. So
yeah, and I think there are a lot of people who are worried about the curves, and if you're worried about the curves, you could always just make a small wall hanging size.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to be a lot easier than you think they're going to be.
They will be.
So, okay, so then let's also talk about the virtual exhibitions.
In general, as many of you know,
Can you start with Sweet Tooth?
Yeah, after we have any quilt along, so the most recent is Sweet Tooth. After we have any quilt along, we accept submissions of photos of your finished quilts, asking people to upload 1 image of their finished quilt. So the Sweet Tooth exhibition is just open, but we've just begun to get submissions. So I think there are only a half dozen right now because people are just finishing them up. If you're someone who's finished your top or all the quilting, by all means, go to the website, upload that photo. It's really useful for all of us to see how other people have interpreted the quilt. You get to see other people's fabric choices, layouts. I think maybe the... Okay.
I'm going to deal with it.
Sorry.
My goodness.
That started me. But we'll see what's going on there. So with the Sweet Tooth, I think the 3rd or 4th example that I downloaded that had been submitted was a really neat layout that I hadn't even anticipated, just working with really nice diagonals. So, it doesn't matter whether it's the most recent or one of the quilt alongs from 2 years ago, but we're always updating it. I try to post new images at the end of every month. I don't get to it all the time, but it's always in the cycle. So just whether it's Secret Agent or New Day, you can do it. Okay.
Delivery across the street.
A delivery. So that's why.
My goodness.
Yeah. We've got a very
Yes.
Our wonderful dog is she's
still a puppy still.
She's still a puppy, and she had a big day. She's doing all sorts of interesting agility training
and obedience training, and yes. So anyway, yes.
We haven't taught her to quilt yet, but we'll work on that.
Or to be quiet. Yes, it was UPS.
So anyway,
yes.
Submissions always welcome for the virtual exhibits.
Absolutely.
And
the alarm system is working. Yes, we don't need one of those, alarm systems.
No. We've got it built in.
Okay, so and so a lot of you have sent or posted in the group beautiful pictures of your sweet tooth quilts. So don't worry about perfect photography or anything like that.
No.
The one thing I will say though, because it is a helpful thing, it's counterintuitive, is that if sometimes people want to take their photo on a really sunny day because they think it'll be really bright, and actually it's counterintuitive, but a cloudy day is a much better day to take a photo because the shadows won't be as harsh on your quilt, and the light won't blow out some of the fabrics.
If you've ever been to a photographer's studio, they have enormous lights, often with kind of white silks to diffuse the light.
Yeah.
And clouds are nature's softbox. Clouds diffuse light so beautifully, and you get very, very even light on a quilt. So, and you're not going to get any harsh shadows.
Yeah.
Especially many of you made sweet tooth with a light background, and white fabrics are always probably the hardest. You really, really want a gray or overcast day if you're shooting those outside. But, any picture is better than none. I think a lot of you share on Facebook and then forget to submit.
Yeah.
But please do that.
I have to tell you, I just got a text on my watch from our next door neighbor, the neighborhood fox.
Was that?
Yes, that's
maybe
something. I think she heard or saw or something.
Yeah,
the fox. It wasn't the delivery person.
We live in Chicago, but we have
coyotes in front of our,
and fox. Yeah.
So anyway,
that might be.
It was the fox.
Okay.
So go ahead and take your photos and
now we're giving Darcy. Yes. She has one block left. Great, do it and then share, please.
And that goes for previous quilt-alongs as well. If you're still working on summer camp or any of the Lighthouse Inn or Secret Agent, all of those we're continuing to update. So let us know. Be sure to submit. If you go on our website, you'll see a quilt-alongs tab, and or in the portal for that particular quilt-along, there's a submission.
It's in both places.
Yeah, in both places. So you should be able to find it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what questions can we ask or can we answer for you?
We've answered that it was UPS.
Well, I think it was UPS or the fox, or maybe both. Maybe that accounted.
UPS maybe delivering fox.
The fox was delivering.
Yeah. Or is it delivery to the fox?
Yes, exactly. Oh, let's talk also about the bow hat. So for the shoreline, we're not selling this, but we're going to recommend it if you need.
It was recommended by someone whose opinion we trust.
Yes. Is the bow hat, this is the factory where we were teaching when we were in France. The bow hat has a mechanical chalk pencil. It is really nice for fine registration marks, which you will need for curves. Yes. And was this is Amazon?
This is an Amazon thing. And Boha has a very thin one and a thick one. And Boha is a really interesting company. They're one of the oldest needle manufacturers in Europe. And maybe 10 years ago, was it? They were purchased by a new owner who has
Young couple.
really done amazing things. And so it works like a regular, I don't know if you can see this, mechanical pencil, but the white lead, and you can get other colors as well, but we do most things with white. We're going to give this a try. We also use school board chalk a lot, but you'll need something if you're doing shoreline to mark these curves. So we thought, hey, we're going to try something new, and we'll let you know how it goes.
Well, I've used these before in classes, and I just forgotten about it, so I would recommend it. There was a question about, are there enough fabrics in the Truly line to do the shoreline quilt? I think if you had if you have some fabrics in your stash that you could supplement, but you need to just make sure you get a good light and dark balance.
Well,
there are some lighter, and there is a value range within that line.
I think it's going to depend on, like, we're doing a value separation, so we're going to have a lighter band and a darker band, but some people are going to group by hues. They may have all different yellows, then all different blues.
Yeah.
So it's it really depends on what you're going for. And again, this is, I mean, we're going to talk so much more about this in the first installment, because people will approach it differently.
Yeah. But I think it would be a good starting place.
Yeah.
The Truly, because the scale of those is really great for these sorts of...
yeah, you can get an idea of the size of the strips there.
Yeah, if you look at the width of the strips, you want to think about fabrics that are going to be a good scale for that. And actually, this is, some of the fabrics we're using are from Truly also. Yeah. So I think as long as you can separate them and have, and maybe supplement them with some, either like the spring bundle, or if you have stash that can work and help them have clear groupings, that will work.
You'll be making groupings that each row has to be distinct from the row above it or below it. So you may have 2 groups, you may have 3 groups, you may have 4 groups. It's going to get interesting.
I want to make sure
she's checking for any other questions.
Any other questions. Okay. Let's see.
I actually Kathy had made the comment that the learning and the strategy and the design thinking is probably as much a part of this quilt along as the curves. I know for some people these curves are going to be a piece of cake. They've done them a lot. I actually think the curves are in some ways one of the smaller parts of it, but it depends on what your background is. But I do think that the discussion,
really great tips for this.
Yeah, there are going to be some different tips for the technical sewing, but also just the approach to curating these groups, which for me is like one of the funnest parts of making a quilt.
So somebody was asking about extra fine on the Bohan chalk pencil. I want to see if you can see. Can you see the leads? It looks like you can see it.
I'll hold this up.
Yeah.
So it's like in front of your black sweater.
Yeah. So it's pretty. It's the finest.
Looks like a 0.5.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's 0.5.
Let's see if it says
but
anywhere. No, it doesn't. But this is the finest chalk pencil I've seen.
And so the disadvantage of a fine chalk pencil is you go through it faster, but the advantage is, one of the things I like with curves is making registration marks so that when you align the piecing, things line up nicely. And, you know, we love the clover wheel for chalking, but it's not as precise. It's better for big gestures.
Exactly.
So actually tracing the curve could work well with that, or a school board chalk, but a pencil like this lets you really get more precise. So yeah, we'll see. We don't have that many notions or gadgets in the studio.
Rulers even.
Yeah.
We only use the rulers we design pretty much.
But a good way to mark things and a good way to cut things, like give me a good pair of scissors.
Yeah.
Yep.
So do you have any other questions for us before we say goodnight? Oh, so on the spot, there are kits of this that use 10-inch pre-cuts plus the supplemental yardage you need. So this is on.
And it actually has the, at the front, it has the 10-inch pre-cuts of the circles, which actually aren't used in the front, in the piece top, but those will be bonuses for you.
Yeah, exactly. And then I don't want to go into too much detail about this, but the fox is back. The fabric lines are going to be delayed a little bit because of the whole tariff situation, and it's changing the way people are buying things.
But we'll keep you posted.
Yeah, we will keep you posted.
We're lucky we'll keep you posted.
But fortunately, we don't have anything out again until April.
Yeah.
So,
but
so the video for Shoreline is being released. The pattern and the video will be released. Lucky,
okay. I will say good night and go take care of Lucky.
Find the fox.
Happy June.
We still have yardage of LTD available, absolutely, and we still have fat quarter bundles as well. So either way, but the pattern and the video, the supplemental video, will go live on the portal. It's 7:00. We're doing this summer nights thing where we're trying to let you have your daytime hours to go do fun things, and we're going to sew at night. So that's why we thought we would do 7:00 on Thursday nights. So if you're traveling on the weekend or whatever, you won't feel like you're missing anything. So 7:00 Central Time video and that week's assignment. So you're not going to get the whole thing at one time because we have had in the past people who just whiz through it and then they don't learn anything, and then it kind of takes the air out of it for other people they feel like they're behind, and that, so we're just going to do it in a few steps at a time and hope that will work well with your summer plans also, or your winter plans. So the weekly sessions will be pre-recorded, and so Joyce has the question: will there be opportunities for questions or discussions ongoing? Yes, that's what happens on the Modern Quilt Studio Patterns and Fabrics group. During quilt-alongs, I pretty much check that group on an hourly basis. No joke, from kind of 7 in the morning until my head hits the pillow. I'm monitoring that and answering questions. There are 22,000 people in that group, and there will be hundreds of people involved in the quilt-along. And if you need an immediate answer, they may give you an opinion as well. The only thing we ask is that you not ask questions about measurements, and not show any pictures of the patterns and that kind of thing, because there are people who try to not pay for patterns, and we need to be able to make a living. But the questions and discussions will be on the Modern Quilt Studio Patterns and Fabrics group on Facebook, and that is a very active and fun way to get support and to get a second set of eyes. If you've got a palette that after the first installment, people will be posting photos of their palettes online and getting opinions, and people are super supportive on that page. So, or on that in that group. So that'll be how we get through the discussions, a part of it, and the support. But if we see that a number of people are struggling with something, we may also jump in and post something to clarify it or help out. But that is the way between the pre-recorded videos to be able to get support. And we're going to have one live session at some point during the quilt-along when we feel like you need it the most. And we'll be able to kind of see, probably on the earlier side rather than on the later side, but we're not sure when we're going to schedule it yet, because we're going to see whether people need more help on color or more help on the curves part. So there will be lots of support for you there. I want to see if I missed anybody else's questions. Okay, I think I got them all. So any other questions? But Joyce, I am sure you'll get lots of help and support, and you'll be able, just post on the in the group if you have any questions, and I'll answer it, or somebody else in the group will answer it, and we'll make sure that you feel like you have the answers to keep going. So, okay, well, if there are no other questions, then we'll say good night, and we're actually jumping in the car right now to drive to Michigan to take care of some business there. So it's a long day for us today, but we will see you on Thursday night, and we'll be monitoring the Modern Quilt Studio Patterns and Fabrics Facebook group immediately after things drop until I go to bed at 10 or 11 o'clock. And we'll make sure that we, everybody feels like they know what they're doing. But take your time with the color, take your time with the palette, because it will save you so much trouble on the, like once you get that palette, it just kind of, everything just falls into place so much more easily. So, oh yes, we are going to check on our gardens. We're between guests, so we've got to we're stealth. We got to sneak in, sneak out, take care of things so the gardens look great for our guests. But anyway, thank you everybody. And Bill and Lucky say good night, and we will see you on Thursday. Can't wait. Take care. Bye-bye.